why would you want to do this? The weight of that question sunk me to the ocean's floor. In everyone's life, you're gonna have those peaks and plateaus, the valleys and everything like that. And especially during COVID, when creative outlets were at a minimum, it became really hard for a lot of us to do anything but just write lyrics. It became hard to play because all you wanted to do is play in front of others. And having that stripped away from you for so long really made it tough for me to play sometimes. Hearing my cousin, someone who's very new to the scene of music, tell me that I should be practicing and get my ass into shape was the most amazingly beautiful and unbelievably, I'm trying to find a word to even describe it. There's nothing like it. He just completely set my ego aside and made me really want to focus on what I realized was important, which was the playing and the love for playing. I'll never forget that conversation because ever since then it's been go, go, go. Play, play, play.
Save me, and I could look into your mind. You couldn't feel me.
Music was a part of my daily routine growing up in the morning. My mom playing a grand piano in the house. And I always found it so mesmerizing and so enticing as a kid. I think that for a lot of younger children, the idea of sound and feeling and texture and sensual feeling is really important. The sort of Epicurean philosophy of a younger child in their stages of development really leads to who they're going to become a little bit later on. As a kid, and I think as a teenager and your teenagers growing up, you always have so many emotions and so many things that are going on just internally. And drums for me was the only way that felt cathartic. And it was the only way that I was able to really physically get it out of my system. There's a textile nature to what I do and physically striking an instrument that the response that I receive from the instrument becomes very different. I think that within music, all we're really dealing with is sort of a level of sonic vibration and a level of how far we can go with making a sonic wave sound different. When you're in a house full of people with such a passion for it, I think that there's an intentional gravitatory field that you stay in, sort of in light of your family, you know? Like for me, it wasn't even a question really. It just sort of seemed natural for me to want to go out and play because everyone else did it. So I think for me, a lot of the question became, well, if they can do it, why can't I? Just learning and taking everything in for my family members was super important, and it was just a way for me to connect with them too.
Her heart was all that she did give me. She didn't feel pain or rearrange her feelings.
I really do feel that percussion has a way to bind a mix and a song together quite effortlessly. I think that percussion is just another piece. It's another layer to the cake. It's another layer of the onion, however you want to say it. But it is, for me, pretty vital to the overall feeling of what that music brings. I think the Stones do it really well. If you listen in the background of the majority of their songs, you might not have heard them before, but you're going to notice a lot of percussion. You're going to notice a pretty heavy amount of percussion that are very straight forward types of rhythms. So whether it be just quarter notes or whole notes or whatever it may be, played on a cowbell, maraca, shaker, however it may be, those lead to bringing a song full circle. That leads to creating an emphasis on a certain area and leaving a certain area to settle down and simmer out. But I think that once put together within a song, I think it only does benefit to those involved in that song by adding layers and flavors and emotions to the back end that subconsciously peek through. And that's the most important part.
The light in the dark, feel the beat, see the spark. You got me thinking, any night, any day, this could all go away. You got me thinking, you got to give it up, you got to give it up, you got to give it up, I'm waiting, I'm trying to let it up. You got to give it up, you got to give it up, you got to give it up, I'm waiting, I'm trying to let it up.
Art is the most unsettling, unforgiving, completely obscurest version of ourselves in a lot of ways, because what you're trying to do is project what's been up here for so long. You're a mix of your own emotions and you're a mix of so many things within your life. And I think that the idea of putting pen to paper and trying to get that out is the art. I got into this conversation last night actually with my girlfriend because we were just talking about, certain things and perception and the idea of individuality and the idea of spirituality and many facets that make up the existential questions, as some would say. And after speaking with her for a few minutes about this topic, it was really interesting because the only conclusion that I came to was an inconclusion, which then resulted in me realizing that there's no right answer to really give for this question. Art can be found wherever you want it to be found. As long as you're expressing a form of desire and you're expressing a form of yourself that is going to positively impact you. I don't think that art is ever meant to be detrimental. I don't think that art has ever meant to be hurtful, and I don't think it ever will be. I think that the majority of artists can conclude and have concluded that art is in and of itself the object in which creates transportation. And I think that that's all we're really trying to do. I think that all I'm trying to really do is make you remember that one car ride that you had. I'm trying to make you remember that one car ride that you had when you listened to that song. And you're gonna remember those willows that were passing you on the way. And you're gonna remember where the sun was in the sky. And the next time you drive down by that road, you're gonna remember where the sun was in the sky, even though it might not be there that time, because it might be later, right? But you're gonna remember. And I think that the idea of stamping myself into a memory is the most meaningful piece of my art. It is really true. I think the more in depth that you look at things, the more you question, the more you really become a skeptic to yourself and understand yourself, the better you can understand how to properly input what you need to input personally, externally, exclusively, to then allow for creativity to overcome and allow for that to sort of seep through into your everyday personal life that then creates the art that you then know.
I never like when you start off with that that fucking smirking grin.
I think both of us were right away. We're like, that should just go to that groove.
I jumped off the couch.
Yeah, we both jumped. We jumped.
The dog jumped. Everybody jumped.
Make sure you build to that chorus. Like, it's gotta have a nice build.
Give it up.
It just feels like
The whole.
I think that the majority of improvising, from my perspective, and I think that the majority of other people, is practicing new alternatives to things that you've already done at a higher level. So, maybe adding, in my case, a few extra right hands or left hand into a fill that I can accommodate, or maybe swinging the fill slightly. Working on permutations and variations of the same thing over and over, which allows you to feel and understand the music a little bit better. I also do believe that a lot of music is what I call breakthrough phases. I think that a lot of musicians always go through a breakthrough stage. So you're going to hit one moment where you go, oh, I can only solo in C. And that very first moment that you can solo in any other box but C, barrier broken. Same thing for drumming. When you can finally hit 200 BPM, barrier broken. And those steps accumulate to creating a repertoire that you can then pull from. And I think contextually within music, my improvisation is very dependent on the situation that I might be in, whether it be a fast-paced tempo song, a slower one. And I use a lot of the drummers that I grew up listening to help me with that. I use a lot of Bonham. I use a lot of Steve Jordan. I use a lot of JoJo Johnson. I use a lot of Aaron Spears, as much as I would like to, but he's unbelievable. So he's sort of another breed. A lot of Thomas Pridgeon. Absolutely love the guy. Unbelievable. Without so many of these guys, it would have been so hard for me to find what I liked and then make it my own, right? All these guys really do is offer you an introduction to an idea. It is then up to the sole musician to take that and then use that as a transcendent value to add something to your playing. I think it's this conglomerative pushing and pulling of factors and forces from others and yourself that allows you to find an identity and then stick with that and grow within a solo, within a section of music, because the end goal is always going to be the same, is to make it as beautiful as possible for the most part. So I think that a lot of it has to just do with who you've surrounded yourself with in your learning phase, and then pulling from those in a very cognitive manner. While I warm up, if I'm, in a back room at a show, or if I'm in a dressing room, or if I'm in the back of the bar that I might be playing in, or wherever I might be. For me, it's more about finding a cadence, an internal metronome, let's put it that way. I think that that's really important. With set parts, I just try to focus on the connection between my limbs. I try to focus a lot on the textile things, because we've had time to practice it in the bedroom, and we're gonna move it outside of that now, and we're just getting ready for what we've practiced for already. Every day has a really big effect on your playing. There's certain days where every musician, and any one of them, can attest to the fact that there'll be a day where you get off stage and you're gonna go, that really sucked. The more you go through that and you learn those cycles, the more you can know how to set yourself up for success before a show. I think that's really important for a lot of people to know, because a lot of people don't realize that how important the day of the show is. And I'm not saying take every show as if it's the biggest show in the world, because you're supposed to be there to enjoy it, not stress about it. The warming up phase is just to get into the groove and the spirit of the room, and to understand where my limbs are. I like to focus on dexterity and just finding a rhythm. I'm not worried about how fast I can play. If I can do 300 beats per minute, I'm not worried about that while I'm focused on making sure that the performance is good. The majority of my warm-up consists of just very basic, simple grooves, a few odd-timed meter imbalances, but that just comes with, you know, understanding the drum kit a little bit more and being able to mess with time signatures. A lot of what I do comes down to just feeling, and the feeling of almost walking on air. What I'm ultimately trying to do is just fill up air and fill up space within that air. I want to just make people in the audience feel as comfortable as possible. And if they're not dancing, that's on me. So as long as they are, I can go to bed happy at night. I've done a lot of shows recently, during the midst of the few lockdowns that we've had. I really think that the unfortunate side of COVID has sort of buckled creativity in live music in a lot of ways. I think that live was especially one of the areas that suffered the most and the longest. I've been back to working on other stuff in my personal life way before I was able to get back into music. And that makes it a little bit unnerving to go back for the majority of us, I think. I can't speak for everyone, but there's always going to be that slight feeling of discomfort knowing that you spent so much time away when you might not have had to. And there's going to need to be some time to adjust to getting back into it. I think that comes with anything in life, though. I do really believe that this is a very momentary feeling that I'm having of being a little bit cautious of wanting to get back. And I don't mean that because I'm really excited to be back. I'm really excited to be playing music. But I think that there's something about the idea of being away for so long where you almost go, do I need to practice that one more time before the show? Right? And it sort of sometimes freaks you out a bit. You go, I just went a week and a half without playing. Or, you know, I went this long without being able to connect with someone on a stage. And I think that when you get back into it, it's a little bit scary, but there's also a moment of complete and utter euphoria that comes along with that. It's a very, very duplicitous feeling that I have towards it because of the idea that I very much neglect the time that I spent away from it.
Hey, it's Joey Bricks from 61.3 Ignition FM. It's Friday, the sun is still shining, and I don't know about you, but I can go for a cold one right about now. So let's fire up the weekend with this tune. Here's an alternative rock band from Niagara Falls coming off their debut EP. This is Stonewall by Avenue Inn.
Tricky to pinpoint my feeling on working in the industry from the background that I've had with it before. If I were to offer advice to anyone starting out in the industry, to anyone who's looking to get into it, I would first say practice with a metronome. And then I would secondly say, if you're really serious about it, bring in some people around you that you can really trust. There's a creative compromise that exists that is not talked about within the music industry. And it can sometimes be a little unfortunate. And I think that some parameters that have been set out in recent years have led to a rise in creativity and a decline in playability. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because I think that creativity is fantastic. Because a lot of people are just going with the times. And I totally understand that. And I think that the music industry is such a changed environment from when I was even first brought in 10 to 12 years ago to what it is now. And I look at the bigger picture in this macro lens of the music industry and really do sometimes have some criticisms, but also have some really nice things to say. And I'm not one to ever bash what someone else is doing. I think that that's their opinion. If they want to go out and sign their life away at times. But I would also suggest that musicians starting out do their homework. I personally have found my level of success without record deals. But that was also a situation based on my personal geometry to other musicians and to the industry. With that being said, if I lived in LA or lived in New York or Atlanta, maybe that would have been different. You know, it could have been. I came from a fairly small town, so I had to do things a little bit differently and operate slightly out of the norm in order to get any type of recognition whatsoever. I think that the best thing that you could do for yourself would be to tread lightly and ask the right people that you can trust. It's actually very funny. I'm going to quote John Mayer on this. He said in one of his Instagram live videos, he said, more than none, 90% of the time, he said 90 or 98% of the time, things are the way they seem, not the way that they are. Because there's the way it is and the way it seems. Trust those people who can tell you how to differentiate between the way it is and the way it seems. Because a lot of us live within the way it seems. So as long as you can have some good people backing you and a good team of people that really believe in you, I would say shoot for the fucking stars. I think that a lot of bands right now are doing some really cool things. I think there's a lot of bands and players especially that are out there right now doing some unbelievable work on really pushing the envelope in terms of playability. I am one of these people that may or may not get a little too involved in the Instagram Explore page, may look at a few drummers, get a little self-deprecative, and then pull yourself up. Because the greatest thing in the world is that you don't want to compare yourself, but you also don't want to be worse. No one wants to be worse. So what better way than to open the floodgates to allow everyone to experience each other? Because really all that does at the end of the day, once you can overcome that sense of feeling of, oh, all you really get is, that's why they're doing that. And that's how they did it. The feeling of figuring something out typically exists in a much more positive way and for a longer period of time than feeling bad about not having done it. You know what I mean? The satisfaction of actually materializing something and having a tangible product to work with is much better than the idea of talking about said project. Because it doesn't really exist until it's materialized and it's there. And so the fabrication is what I really like. And I like the mode of fabrication right now because I think that platforms like Instagram and platforms like Facebook are an amazing way for young artists who might be in a place in the world that isn't so accessible to music for them to really get out there and show what they're made of. And I think it's amazing. I think that there's so many artists now who have been able to make a living doing this from their bedroom. And I have no problem with that whatsoever. I think that if I did, that would be a disgrace to art. And I think that if I were to ever look at those people in a negative way and go, well, you know, that's taken away from my job, I don't really deserve to be a musician. Because what I'm trying to do completely in a very simple sentence is let people enjoy 3 minutes.